Go. All right, buddy. Going live. All right, the date, November 13th, 1927. The time, well, it wasn't Monday Night Football. It was in the afternoon. The teams, the New York Giants at the Staten Island Stapletons. The place, none other than Thompson Park, home of the Staten Island Stapletons. So Staten Island, right? Now this game originally for the Giants, not this game, but the Giants originally on November 13th, 1927, were supposed to play the Buffalo Bisons. But in 1927, the Buffalo Bisons were so bad. How bad were they? The Buffalo Bisons were so bad they folded up and they left the league. And they came back, I believe it was in 1929. But they were just, they played 5 games. They scored 1 time in 5 games. Buffalo was just, the 1927 Buffalo Bison season was their 8th in the league. I mean, they'd been around for a while. But the team failed to improve on their previous output of 4-4-2, losing 5 games and winning none in 1927. They finished 12th, which was last in the league. It was the Buffalo, Texas Rangers experiment from the previous season, which discontinued. The city's cold weather was the primary reason. And previous head coach Jim Kendrick left to go play for the Giants. Reverting the Bison's name, a man with the name of Dim Batterson was named as head coach. The team failed to score a single point in all but 1 game. So out of the 5 games, they got shut out 4 times. They scored one game. They resulted in a 1.6 points per game average. This is the Bisons in 1927. A near record low offensive output. The Bisons suspended operations 5 games into the season, and they would not return until 1929. And back then, you could do that. Some teams, just suspended operations for like a year. I mean, obviously, you got to get permission to do that and everything, but that happened quite often back then. A lot of times, some teams just folded up and just returned the team back to the league. Yeah, so it all depends. But the Bisons in 1927, their first game was September 25th. This is right out of Wikipedia. Right? They played at Pottsville against the Maroons. They lost 22-0. Then on October 2nd, the following Sunday, they played at Providence Steamroller. They lost 5-0. Then they played a home game against the New York Yankees on October 12th. And that's the only game they scored in. They lost 19-8. Then they got, Then they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. October 15th, they played, which was a Saturday, and they played in Frankfurt, Philadelphia, because they had the blue laws back then, and in Philadelphia, you could not play sporting events on Sunday. Now, I'm to be honest with you, I don't know with the blue laws. Now, like I know, like high school football games usually on Saturday or whatever, but I'm not sure if there's, if it was like non-pro events, if they played them on Sunday or not. That I'm in Philadelphia, I don't know, but I do know, like back then, like the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets from Philadelphia, like the Philadelphia Athletics, the baseball team, could not play sporting events on Sunday. Like the Philadelphia Athletics baseball team. The only time during the season that they played on a Sunday, they were on the road. They were at home. They did not play on Sunday, and neither did the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. So October 15th, the Buffalo Bisons went to play in Frankfurt against the Yellow Jackets, and they lost 54-0. Then the very next day, they went from Frankfurt up to Buffalo, and the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets won 23-0. Now, it was just like the absolutely pathetic performance. I mean, it's not, you lose 54-0 in and you're part of the NFL, and you in 1927 score 54 points is like about I'd say about 800 points now. It was a lot of points, a lot of points. I mean, if you lost like the last game was 23-0, that's really bad. I mean, nowadays, of course, 23-0 is bad. But back then, when it was like literally like 3 yards in a cloud of dust, 23-0 is pretty bad. So I was just between the poor play and low attendance and everything, and they just pulled it up. So the Giants obviously had originally, when October 16th rolled around and the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets went to Buffalo to play the Bisons, the Giants were thinking, we're going to play Buffalo on November 13th. Well, as I said, Buffalo folded up for the season. They returned 2 seasons later. So the Giants were actually the Giants wound up 11-1-1 for the 27th season. So that was 13 games. They were actually supposed to play this game, the 14th game. But, obviously you can't play a team if they're not in existence anymore, right? So they played the Staten Island Stapletons. Now, interestingly, they wound up playing the Stapletons 2 times. One of them was on Thanksgiving. They played the Staten Island Stapletons 7 times on Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but only 4 of those count toward the NFL stats, because the first 3 times the Giants played the Staten Island Stapletons on Thanksgiving, the Staten Island Stapletons were not part of the NFL. They were just they were a very good exhibition team. Staten Island Stapletons would join the NFL in 1929. From 1929 to 32, they were in the NFL. And the Giants, 1929, 30, 31, and 32, those 4 seasons, they played the Staten Island Stapletons on Thanksgiving. And they played the Staten Island Stapletons a grand total of 7 times on Thanksgiving. But the first 3 times, 25, 27, and 28, they did not count in the NFL standings, I guess, if you want to say, or record book, I guess, because Staten Island was only part of the league for 4 seasons. So if you go back in time, if you look at the teams that the Giants have played the most on Thanksgiving, the Staten Island Stapletons, they played them the most, 7 times. But only 4 of them were on the Staten Island Stapletons were in the NFL. After the Staten Island Stapletons disbanded after the 32 season, the Giants then started playing the Brooklyn Dodgers on Thanksgiving. And from 1932 to 1938, those 6 seasons, they played the Brooklyn Dodgers on Thanksgiving. So the Brooklyn Dodgers, if you look back in the record books, who the Giants played the most times on Thanksgiving, it would be the Brooklyn Dodgers, although they did play the Staten Island Stapletons more times, but as I said, only 4 of those times they played the Stapletons. The Stapletons were actually in the NFL. Then again, I guess, of course, if the Giants are going to play the Cowboys every other year on Thanksgiving, apparently because they played like 2 years ago, they're playing them this year. So I guess if they play the Cowboys every other year, I guess within a matter of a few years, the Giants will be playing the Cowboys more than any other team on Thanksgiving. But as of this recording, right, the Giants have played the Staten Island Stapletons more than any other team on Thanksgiving. That would be 7 times. They played them 2 times this season, both of them, November 13th here. And then they played them, 11 days later on the 24th, which was Thanksgiving. Both times they played them in Thompson's Athletic Stadium, or Thompson Stadium in Staten Island. The Giants would win both times by shutout. I mean, the Giants were very, very dominant this year. As I said, they were wound up 11-1-1. Out of those 13 games, the Giants only got scored on in three games all season long. Giants gave up 20 points in those 3 games. They gave up 3 touchdowns. During the course of the entire season, during the course of the 13 games that the Giants played, They only gave the opposing team only kicked the ball through the uprights against the Giants 2 times, and there was 2 extra points got kicked against the Giants all season long. There was not a successful field goal try against the Giants in the 1927 season, which is rather remarkable. So the Giants only gave up 1.5 points per game, which is absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. One of the reasons why the Giants never gave up, or bigger reasons the Giants didn't give up maybe a successful field goal try, was because they were just beating teams. And when you're beating a team in the third quarter by a couple touchdowns, the team's not, well, let's see, we'll kick a field goal here and we'll get the ball and we'll march back down. We'll get another field goal, and then we'll be a touchdown, a 2-point conversion away, and then we'll get the ball back. And back then a lot, the teams were just, if they were behind, I'm not saying by just a touchdown, but if they were behind by more than a touchdown, a lot of teams, when they would drive down the field, they were, instead of trying to kick a field goal, all right, we're down 14-0. Let's kick a field goal here. Let's get some points on the. No, they would try for touchdowns, and that was the case a lot of times. The Giants were just shutting teams out, beating them by double digits. So a lot of times in the second half of a lot of these games, when the team's playing the Giants were winning. A lot of times by double digits. Like in this case, in this game, I'm going to be going over here. And the teams, they're like, well, we need a couple touchdowns. A field goal ain't going to do us. That's even if we even make the field goal. Because, kicking a field goal back then, nowadays it's like, 80%, 85% field goal success. Back then, 30% maybe. It was, not very high. 40% maybe, not very high. So, but the Giants were just very, very dominant. But the Staten Island State, they've been they were around for a while. They were a very good independent team, and as I said, they managed to play 4 seasons in the NFL: 1929, 30, 31, and 32. But what has happened with a lot of teams back in that era, right, was a lot of teams got the depression. Got a lot of teams, unless you had like a big, fan following like the Giants did, or Mr. Mara had. He was a bookie on the side, so if he needed to supplement the Giants, if the Giants were maybe a little hard up for cash, he had something on the side. He could take some money and put it into the business. A lot of teams didn't have that. It was sink or swim. Right? If the team did good, they made some money. They were swimming. If the team didn't do good, they lost money. They sank because then nobody, they didn't have any extra money to put in there. But Mr. Mara did, and he with him and the love that he had, he wanted to be successful, but the love he had for his 2 sons, Wellington and Jack, he was he actually in 1930 he handed over the team. They became the owners, right? So his love for his 2 sons, right, is what helped keep also the Giants going too. If Tim Mara did not have his 2 sons that he could maybe pass this team on to, I don't know, might have been maybe a little bit of a different story if the Giants would still be around or not, but it is what it is. But so the Stapletons have been around for quite a few years. Now this is out of Wikipedia. Now I got a couple articles here to read, and as with many teams back then, they went by a couple names. But it says the Staten Island Stapletons, also known as the Staten Island Stapes, not the Stapletons, but the Stapes. Were a professional American football team founded in 1915. They played in the National Football League from 29 to 32. The team was based in the Stapleton section of Staten Island. They played under the shortened nicknames the Stapes the final 2 seasons. Jack Shapiro, a blocking back for the Stapletons, was the shortest player in NFL history, weighing between 119 and 126 pounds. And he was just over 5 feet tall. Wow. And it was a blocking back. Imagine a blocking back being 120 pounds, 5 foot tall, 120 pounds. Could you imagine him being a blocking back in today's NFL? Wow. Holy cow. One of Dexter Lawrence's legs weighs 120 pounds. In the early years, the Staten Island Stapletons were founded in 1915 as a neighborhood team, as were so many teams back then. Yeah, so many teams. The team was organized by Dan Blaine, who also served as the team's halfback. Blaine later became rich by building up a chain of restaurants. The Stapletons played similar semi-pro neighborhood teams from the New York City area. During those early years, the Stapes played more for fun than money. Crowds were small and players' salaries averaged $10 per game. But, I mean, back then, $10 for a game, and you play a game and, within 2 hours, you made $10, 1915. That was pretty good. Yeah, you might got a bloody nose or something, but, hey, for $10 back then, $10, 1915, that was good money. Let's see. Oh, okay, here you go. This I love it when they do this. Crowds are small and players' salaries average $10 per game, which is the equivalent to $301 in today's market. The team won several local semi-pro titles before World War I. The team was inactive in 1918 due to Blaine's service commitment to the military and involvement in the war. But that was 1918 was the last year of the war. And reactivated in the team in 1919 after the war was over. By that time, he was the sole owner. He retired as a player in 1924 and continued as owner and manager of the team, commonly called the Stapes. They took to Thompson Stadium, a minor league park in the neighborhood that gave them their name, as their permanent home field, Thompson Stadium. And a lot of times when the Giants played the Staten Island Stapletons, I don't know why, so forgive me, but a lot of times when the Giants played the Stapletons, they played in Thompson Stadium. I don't know why. Because if they played at the Polo Grounds, you get a bigger crowd. Small stadium, you can only hold so many people. But a lot of times when the Giants and the Stapletons played, it was in Thompson Stadium. Today, the stadium site is occupied by Stapleton Housing, located between Broad, Hill, and Warren Streets and Tompkins Avenue. Prior to moving into the Thompson Stadium, the Stapletons played in two temporary local parks, Stapleton Field and East Shore Oval. Between 1923 and 1924, Stapes manager Daniel Daly claimed the New York Metropolitan Championship by beating the best independent pro teams in the area. In 1925, Tim Mara formed the New York Giants, who moved into the Polo Grounds. Their presence in the New York overshadowed the Stapes, particularly with the sellout visit by Red Grange and the Chicago Bears on December 6, 1927. That was I've seen different things in articles, anywhere from 70,000 people showed up at the Polo Grounds, so over 60,000. The Giants and the Stapes began their New York rivalry on Thanksgiving Day, 1925, when the Giants defeated the Stapes in an exhibition game 7-0. Then we have, the Newark Bears takeover. Over the following couple of seasons, the Stapes would play exhibitions against pro teams from the NFL and various other leagues. On November 14, 1926, the Stapes were routed by the Newark Bears 33-0. The Bears belonged to Red Grange's American Football League, which served as a competitor to the NFL during the 1926 season. Unhappy with the defeat, Blaine promptly hired most of the Newark players, including star rookie Doug Wyckoff, who were still owed money because the Newark owner was having financial problems. As a result, the Bears went out of business while the Stapletons benefit from New York's folding. 1928, Blaine further upgraded the team by signing some players from New York University. That was the thing. in the 1926 season, there was the American Football League. It was the league that was supposed to be in competition with the NFL. It only lasted one season. There was 9 teams. By the end of the season, 5 of the teams had folded up from this American Football League. The Newark Bears were one of them. Just because financially they just could not stay afloat. There was only 4 teams that were left in the AFL at the end of the season. So it was not a good venture. In 1927, the Stapes fielded their ex-Newark Bears squad. Although Wyckoff signed with the Giants, the Giants would go on to win the 1927 NFL championship and defeated the Stapes twice in non-league games, shut them out both times. They beat them 19-0 in this game on November 13th, and then they beat them 18-0 on Thanksgiving Day, November 24th, 1927. The Stapes, though, did manage to beat the NFL's Duluth Eskimos, featuring Ernie Nevers 7-6 on November 27th, 1927. By 1928, Blaine wanted the Stapes to become an NFL franchise. He bolstered his squad by re-signing Doug Wyckoff back as a player coach and by signing 6 graduates from the nationally ranked New York University team. The Stapes had their best season on record, going 10-1-1, including a 3-1 record against the NFL teams. They beat the Giants. Well, so they even pulled off a 7-0 victory over the Giants on Thanksgiving Day game. But in 1928, the Giants also had their first losing season. So the Giants went from 11-1-1 in 27, one of the best teams, I don't want to say ever, but they're 11-1-1, won the championship. And then the next season, they had a losing record. It happens, right? Let's see. After the team rolled up a 10-1-1 record in 1928, Blaine applied for an NFL franchise in 1929. He needed permission from Tim Mara, the owner of the Giants, because Staten Island was in Mara's exclusive territory. But Mara actually had an extra franchise. It originally belonged to the Brooklyn Lions and had been given to Mara when the Lions folded in 1927 because they owed him money. Mara had then allowed the New York Yankees, owned by Granger's manager C.C. Powell, to use the franchise when the team moved from the defunct AFL into the NFL. The Yankees went out of business after the 28th season, so the franchise again went back to Mara, and he passed those franchise rights on to Staten Island. Mr. Mara was I'll tell you what, the guy was, he was a businessman. He wanted to succeed and all, but, he was a heck of a guy. And the love he has for his 2 sons, Jack and Wellington, are just, you realize that Wellington Mara was 14 years old when he became part owner of the 14. That would be, I don't know. I guess I was 14, in my 10th grade in high school. Could you imagine going into high school in 10th grade? Yeah, I own the Giants. Could you imagine that? Whew. Crazy. Blaine promptly hired Ken Strong, who would become another Giant, who became a Stapletons Hall of Famer. Strong, who received All-American honors while at New York University, was a speedy, powerful runner who was also one of the best kickers in the area. Yes, he was. The Stapletons never had a winning season in the NFL. During its first NFL season in 1929, the team went 3-4-3, defeating the Dayton Triangles, the Boston Bulldogs, and the Minneapolis Red Jackets. The team also managed to tie the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets once and the Orange Tornadoes twice. The team improved to a 5-5-2 record in 1930. That season, the Stapes managed to defeat the rival New York Giants 7-6 after a 4-yard touchdown run from Doug Wyckoff and an extra point kick from Ken Strong. Now, obviously, I said Doug Wyckoff played for the Giants, and the extra point kick from Ken Strong in later years, he played for the Giants. A lot of Giants connections here. In July 1931, the team's official name on the league records was changed from the Stapleton Football Club Incorporated to Staten Island Stapes. At this time, Doug Wyckoff left the team to rejoin the Giants. In need of a coach, Blaine hired Hinkie Haynes, who played for the New York Giants. And actually, Hinkie Haynes was the was the first true star in New York Giants history. The first draw, the first attraction was Jim Thorpe. He was the guy that Mara got to put some fans in the stands, but he only played 3 games for the Giants, and then the Giants let him go because he had a bad knee. But the first true, star for the team was Hinkie Haynes. He scored the Giants' first touchdown against the Cleveland Bulldogs when they beat the Bulldogs 19-0. Hinkie Haynes was the first true star for the Giants. So Blaine hired Hinkie Haynes, who had played briefly for the Stapes in 1929. The Stapes opened at home by beating the Brooklyn Dodgers 9-7 before 7,000 fans. A week later at Ebbets Field, the Dodgers forced 3 interceptions to beat the Stapes 18-6. The team posted a 4-6-1 record in 1931, defeating the Giants and the Dodgers twice and the Cleveland Indians. Then we had the decline. All right. 1932, the Stapes finished last, defeating only the Giants and the Chicago Cardinals. Blaine was allowed by the NFL to suspend league play for the upcoming 33 season. The team continued to lose money in 1933 while the team posted losses against the Giants, Dodgers, Portsmouth Spartans, who became the Detroit Lions, and the Green Bay Packers. It did manage to defeat the newly established Philadelphia Eagles. Doug Wyckoff and Bob Campiglio stayed with the Stapes in 1933, but their star player Ken Strong signed with the Giants and helped them win the NFL's Eastern Division Championship that season and the NFL League Championship in 1934. Blaine went through the formality of getting NFL permission to suspend league operations for the 34 season. The team played one more season of semi-pro football in 1934 before quietly folding a year later. In June 1935, Blaine's franchise was finally declared forfeit. The franchise failure can be blamed on a combination of the Great Depression and having too small of a stadium that could never accommodate enough fans to make the team profitable. Therefore, the Stapes fans could not afford enough tickets to make a team possible. And that was the one thing back then, what was back then. I mean, if you saw if there was a good pro, they had to get paid. You want to. There wasn't. It wasn't like guys didn't want to play for the teams or nothing like that. But you had to come up with money, and if you couldn't come up with money to pay a guy whatever, a couple $100 a game, or some guys made a couple $1,000 a year. The contract was certain amount of money per year. If you couldn't come up with that, you couldn't afford to bring in good players, to win football games, to get fans in the stands, to pay your players, to make money, to be profitable, to stay in existence. And so it was a very, very tough time, especially with the Depression. And the one thing that made it very difficult, like with the Providence Steamroller, they had the Cyclodrome, which was a bicycle stadium. Well, it can only hold like 10,000 people. 10,000 people was a nice draw, but you wanted to have it where you can get 20, 30,000. So the game was played, you paid the players, and there was some money left over. But a lot of these teams, I said, the stadiums were just too small. That was one of the things that really helped the Giants because they got into the Polo Grounds. The Polo Grounds could hold. The one game against Red Grange, they held like the December 6, 1925 game. There's reports. There was people standing in the aisles and stuff like that. There was reports about like 70,000 people were there. It was just crazy, absolute crazy. Let's see here. All right, I got one more thing here. I got to read. I got a couple other articles, but I'll be here for probably another half an hour reading all this stuff. But the Staten Island Stapletons, also known as the Staten Island Staples, was a professional American football team. Is this the same thing here? Yeah, it looks like it. All right, let's see. I got a couple other things here. Oh, okay. Here we go. I'll read this here. It says, The Stapes and the Giants games from 1929 and 1932 were the start of a Staten Island gridiron tradition. Thanksgiving, turkey, stuffing, and football, a time-honored tradition in many households around the country. When the holiday rolls around each November, we sit down after a good meal and turn on the television to watch some good college or pro football games. Yes. So lucky, so lucky. No doubt many will remember the great local high school rivalries of years past, particularly the classic Thanksgiving football game of 1959 between Curtis and New Dorp high schools, chronicled in Jay Price's book. Now, I don't know what that's got to do with it, but few will remember the great Thanksgiving Day National Football League games played at Thompson Stadium. It only lasted 4 years. Well, that was 4 years in the NFL. They said the Giants and the Stapletons they were playing each other in Thompson Stadium since 1925. But it says here it only lasted 4 years because that's when the Staten Island Stapletons were part of the NFL, 1929 to 32. But what excitement these games generated. The Staten Island's own NFL football team played the New York Giants on Thanksgiving Day from 1929 to 1932. Amazingly, the Stapes held their own against the mighty Giants with a 2-1-1 record. Of course, this doesn't count the exhibition game the Stapes won against the Giants 7-0 before they joined the NFL in 1928. Well, I don't know why they're not talking about the Giants beating them 2 times in 1927. So, seems like this. Anyway, since 1915, the Stapes played games against other semi-pro teams a full 5 years before the NFL existed and 10 years before the NFL came to New York. In fact, they were good enough to win several titles, including a Metropolitan Championship before World War I. The team was formed by Dane Blaine and several other players, with each player earning a salary of $10 per game. Blaine became a successful restaurateur and took over sole ownership of the team in 1919. He continued to play halfback until 1924, when he retired at the age of 33. The Stapes remained the football power in the area until Tim Mara formed the New York Giants in the new NFL and moved them into the Polo Grounds in 1925. The Stapes joined the NFL in 1929. One of the Stapes and the NFL's greatest players at the time was an All-American tailback from NYU named Ken Strong. He was a versatile athlete. Not only did he lead all college football players in scoring his senior year, he was also a coveted baseball player, signing with the New York Yankees to play outfield. Well, it was interesting, too. I mean, Hinkie Haynes played for the New York Yankees as well, too. So Hinkie Haynes was a two-way star. One of the two first sport athletes, Strong focused on football after several injuries ended his baseball career in 1931. Strong was hired by the Stapes as an amazing salary of $5,000 plus a rent-free apartment for the season. Giants had also pursued Strong, but only offered him $200 per game. Giants got cheap. Should have offered him more. They would have had him. Later in his career, Strong would play for the Giants. After his career was over, Strong was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. In 1929, there were 12 teams in the NFL with names like the Triangles, the Yellow Jackets, the Tornadoes, the Steamroller, and the Bulldogs. Not exactly household names. Season tickets were sold for $18. You can't even get a bottle of water nowadays for $18 at a football game. What a joke! Absolute joke. Which also included an exhibition game. So, right, in their first year, the Stapes compiled a 3-4-3 record and finished 6th. Although they lost that year to the Giants on Thanksgiving Day, 21-7, things were going well for the Stapes. They drew capacity crowds of 10,000 for home games and brought 10,000 fans to the Polo Grounds when they played the Giants. But the thing is, it's a shame because the capacity crowd of just 10,000 people, they couldn't get more people. If the stadium was 20,000, maybe they could have gotten another 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people in there. That's a lot of extra money. That extra 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people you got in there paying customers, that might have kept the Stapletons afloat. The following year was better for the Stapes. They compiled a 5-5-2 record, once again finishing sixth. They won a thriller against the Giants on Thanksgiving Day, 7-6. Unfortunately, their fortunes were about to change. The Depression began to take its toll on the league. By 1931, the NFL had shrunk to 8 teams, and the Stapes were barely holding on as their attendance dwindled. Their record in that year slipped to 4-6-1, and the following year, the last year they were active in the league, they dropped to 2-7-3. The only bright spot was that they continued to play well against the Giants at Thompson Stadium. In 1931, they beat the Giants 9-6. And in their last year, 1932, they managed to tie the Giants 13-13 on Thanksgiving. The Stapes continued to lose money and were forced to suspend football operations in 1933 and again in 1934. The following year, the Stapes franchise was declared forfeit by the league. It was officially over, but not before the Stapes brought many exciting moments to their fans and helped to make local football a tradition on Thanksgiving Day. So it's it was a as I said, if the Giants have played the Staten Island Stapletons more on Thanksgiving than they played any other team. I said, fortunately, only 40 games actually count toward the NFL record books or records or whatever, because the 3 of the times, that when they played in 1925, 27, and 28, the Stapes were not part of the NFL. But this game, anyway, was not on Thanksgiving. That'll be that's the video from. Let's see here. So we got one here. So on the 13th, then the Giants play. Actually, the Giants play 2 more games. They play another exhibition game in Boston on Saturday, the 19th. Then on Sunday at home, they play the Chicago Cardinals on the 20th, and then they play on Thanksgiving. Then they play the Stapes once again back at Thompson Stadium. So I got 3 more after this. I got my 3rd video in this series. We'll be playing the Giants will be playing the Stapes once again at Thompson Stadium, and that will be on Thanksgiving Day. So this game, there wasn't a lot of write-up on this one here. I'm not sure if it's because it was it was a game was supposed to be against Buffalo, and it got rescheduled. They played the Stapes. Not exactly sure. I looked and looked, and I could find a couple of articles on it. So there's a couple nice little write-ups on this game, but it wasn't a ton, because you figure, especially if you got all the New York papers, you figure there'd be some nice articles, but I couldn't really find a lot anyway. This is a small one here. It says the New York Giants, Grid Giants win over Stapleton by a 19-0 count. The New York Grid Giants handled the Stapleton 11, a 19-0 lacing yesterday at Thompson Stadium in Staten Island before 10,000 fans. Yeah, I mean, but that's all they could fit in there. The stadium was bigger. They could have maybe had 15 or 20,000 fans in there. Hinkie Haynes carried over 2 of the Giants' touchdowns, one on a forward pass and the other on a plunge. Wyckoff accounted for the other remaining 6 pointers on a crash through the Stapleton line. McBride made good 2 points after touchdowns with place kicks. The Giants scored a touchdown in the first, the third, and the fourth quarters in this game. So that was the short one. And I got find this here. So, okay. Then I got a couple nice little articles here. This one says the Giants subdued the Stapleton Pros. Haynes leads attack in a 19-0 victory over the Staten Island Gridiron. A crowd of more than 10,000, the biggest football throng Staten Island ever knew, jammed its way into Thompson Park to see the New York Football Giants humble the strong Stapleton Pros 19-0. Staten Island and fans felt their 11 was perhaps the strongest pro outfit in the East, but Tim Mara's Gritters, headed by Hinkie Haynes, taught them differently. Haynes, Jack McBride, and Mule Wilson were too fast for the Stapes, and the Giants scored in every period except for the second. In that period, they carried the ball almost down to the goal line on rushes by McBride, Haynes, Wyckoff, and Wilson, but Haynes missed McBride's pass over the goal line. Wilson scored the first touchdown for New York in the opening period, following a march of 30 yards in which 2 forward passes counted heavily. In the third period, a march the full length of the field by the Giants, in which running plays and forward passes were nicely mixed, laid the ball on the Stapleton 12-yard line, from which point Haynes took a forward pass from McBride and went over for the second touchdown. The third and last touchdown came in the last period when the Stapleton fullback was smothered on an attempted punt. It was New York's ball on the 25-yard line. McBride shot a forward pass to Joe Guyon for 20 yards, and on the next play, Haynes slipped around Stapleton's right end for the score. The Giants made 105 yards by rushing for 7 first downs and 115 yards by completing 11 out of 20 passes. That's pretty good. And the fact they threw 20 passes, that's a lot. And 6 first downs. So the Giants made 13 first downs, which once again, that was a lot. And they had 220 yards total offense, which was pretty good. But the mixture, 105 yards rushing, 115 yards passing. The Stapes, on the other hand, made only 72 yards by rushing for 4 first downs and failed to complete a single forward pass. So they only had they had 4 first downs all game. They had 72 yards rushing, 72 yards. Now, the thing is, I don't know, is that, they failed to complete a single forward pass. Now, possibly if they got sacked. See, that I don't know. If they got sacked, say I went back to pass, he got sacked, he lost 10 yards. Does that count toward the rushing, or does that count toward the pass? That I don't know. But anyway, the Stapes didn't even have 100 yards of offense in this game. They only had 4 first downs. But I say it just goes to show you how good the Giants' defense was in 1927. Corgan, left end for the Giants, takes a forward pass with the same case as he catches a baseball. Haynes also was picking them out of the air. The Giants made much headway through the air. I mean, throwing 20 passes is a lot, and they were 11 out of 20. Completing over 50% of the passes is very impressive. All right, so now these are the lineups. Corgan was the left end for the Giants. Owen was the left tackle. Nesser was the left guard. Murtaugh was the center. Garvey was the right guard. Milsteed was the right tackle. Jappy was the right end. Haynes was the quarterback. Mule Wilson was the left halfback. Wyckoff was the right halfback, and McBride was the fullback. Now for the Stapes, Stein was their left end. Williams was their left tackle. Godwin was their left guard. Rice was their center. Looks like Manella, I guess, was their right guard. Lord was their right tackle. King was their right end. F. Williams was their quarterback. Newton was the left halfback. McCormack was the right halfback, and Waite was their fullback. Let's see, substitutions for the Stapletons. Smith went in for Waite. Tersey went in for King. Waite went in for Smith. Maurer went in for Stein. Tersey for King. Hanson for Maurer. Murray for Rice. So a lot of substitutes. The Giants had quite a few substitutes as well, too. Once again, this was an exhibition game. But let's see here. Biggs went in for Garvey. Haggerty went in for Haynes. Kaywood went in for Nesser. White went in for Wilson. Stallman went in for Jappy. Haynes for Haggerty. Garvey for Big. Jappy went in for Corgan. Joe Guyon went in for Wyckoff. So a lot of substitutes. I said once again, it was an exhibition game. All right, so I got one more here. The Giants aerials tripped Stapleton by 19-0. Start over 30, but only 2 are intercepted and 3 are grounded. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but New York line is strong. 3 Staten Island backs retired after vainly trying to break it. And here it says there's a crowd of 8,500 there. The other article said there was 10,000. Right. Employing a forward passing attack with devastating effectiveness, the New York Giants, leaders in the National Football League, scored a 19-0 victory over the Stapleton 11 yesterday at Thompson's Athletic Stadium in Staten Island before an overflow crowd of 8,500. The withdrawal of Buffalo from the league competition afforded the Giants an opportunity of engaging in an exhibition game. The Giants' display of forward passing attack truly was an exhibition. More than 30 forwards were attempted. So, once again, you got a lot of discrepancies because in that other article said the Giants threw the ball 20 times and they completed 11. Here I said they threw more than 30 passes. So, let's see. And then the thing is here, so the other article said they threw 11, completed 20. Here, they said they threw more than 30. So here it says only 3 were grounded or meant incomplete, and 2 of them were intercepted. So, I mean, here it means they, according to this article, like the Giants completed like at least 25 passes, which doesn't sound right, but. The rest found haven in the waiting. As I said, the Giants threw more than 30 forwards. Only 3 were incomplete. Only two were intercepted. The rest found haven in the waiting arms of the Giants receivers. Although the New Yorkers were able to gain plenty of territory by the use of straight football, they apparently went into the fray with the sole intention of unlimbering the passing attack. Now, this is just an exhibition game. So, if they wanted to go in there, right, Earl Pottinger, their coach, wanted to go and you know what? Let's it's just an exhibition game. We got let's open up. Let's see what we can do with the passing attack. If we lose, it's not going to hurt us in the standings, right? Got people there. Let's play the game. They make some money. We make some money. Let's work on our football. Let's work on our passing attack. So apparently that's what the Giants did in this game. As I said, because if they threw 30 passes, if everyone was picked off and run back for a touchdown, what you do? It doesn't count against them in the standings. So the spotlight was not focused on any particular member of the Giant team. The New York aggregation starred individually and as a team, with the special mention going to Hinkie Haynes and Doug Wyckoff. Jack McBride was brilliant in his passing. McBride threw it from his fullback position. He was the fullback. McBride did a lot of passing. So McBride, his passing was brilliant. In the Carl Waite, Harold Hansen, and Orrin Rice were the Stapleton luminaries. The Stapleton holds the Giants. An off-tackle plunge by Wyckoff brought the Giants their first score in the first quarter. And Stapleton braced to keep the New York team away from its goal line for the rest of the half. The determined charging of the Giants line was too much for the Stapleton forwards in the second half, and Haynes crossed twice, once after catching a forward and again on a 20-yard end run. See, because in the other one, it said the ball got brought down to the 5-yard line and Haynes ran around the end for 5 yards. Here it says he had a 20-yard end run. This happens a lot. Stapleton was handicapped after the first period by the departure of 3 of their 4 regular backs, who were forced to leave the game after savage tackles by the Giants. However, their prolonged stay in the game could hardly have affected the result, but might have enabled Stapleton to hold down the score. In the first quarter, the ball was constantly in the Stapleton territory. Forwards from McBride to Haynes and Wilson, with an occasional line plunge by Wyckoff, brought the ball to the 4-yard line. Wyckoff smashed off tackle for the score. King blocked McBride's placement kick. Stapleton intercepted a pass in the second quarter when Rice leaped up to snare the ball, but the Stapleton offensive drive came to an abrupt close when Smith fumbled. Then it says here, Haynes went over twice. In the third session, McBride tossed a 30-yard pass to Haynes, who sprinted a few yards for the second Giant tally. This time, McBride kicked the goal. Haynes scored at the end in the final period for a 20-yard dash for the last score of the game, but McBride's placement kick went wide. So you have disparaging reports, and it's darn near impossible to figure any of that stuff out, because there's no films, there's no NFL films, there's no ESPN highlights, there's nobody alive left from those games or anything like that. And even if there was somebody miraculously who nowadays might be 105 years old, who actually went to this one game, at the time when they were like 4 or 5 years old or whatever, I hardly realize. I think that they're going to actually remember how far Hinkie Haynes' touchdown run was. So, but you get this a lot. But regardless, I mean, the Giants were certainly the superior team in this game, and once again, they proved to be. They wound up shutting out their opponent. And I said the Giants would have another. And interestingly, I said during this season, so the Giants played here on Sunday. Then the Giants would play the following Saturday, an exhibition game on Saturday in Boston at Fenway Park. Then they'd come home on Sunday, the very next day, play another game against the Chicago Cardinals, which actually counted. So they played an exhibition game the day before they played a pro game. I mean, just stuff they did like that back then was just really, really crazy, because you play an exhibition game on a Saturday, can beat your team up, injuries and all that, and then you play a game which you're supposed to count in the standings on Sunday. You're taking a huge risk there. But the Giants wind up winning both those games, right? And I said, and then 3 games into the future, the Giants will once again play the Staten Island Stapletons on Thanksgiving. Once again, so that's what happened on this day. The Giants would play the Staten Island Stapletons in Thompson Stadium, and they would win by a score of 19-0. So that's what happened on this date, November 13th, 1927, in New York football Giants history. See you next time.